The world through the thermal scope was binary, cold black, living white. Sergeant Ava Kane's heartbeat slowed to 42 beats per minute as her finger rested outside the trigger guard. 14 floors below, the target moved through the kill zone like a ghost in the rubble. Then the sound came. Bzzz. Not one drone, a swarm. The sky darkened with autonomous hunters, their rotors churning the desert air into a mechanical swarm. Dutch Mercer's voice crackled in her ear. "Viper, they're not patrolling. They're hunting." Ava's blood turned to ice as the realization hit. The thermal signature, they'd been made. "Dutch, we're compromised." The building shook. Artillery fire, precision-guided, algorithm calculated. The machines had found them. The wind carried dust through the shattered window frame, a constant whisper against Ava Kane's ghillie suit. She'd been motionless for 6 hours, prone on the concrete floor of what used to be someone's apartment. Family photos still clung to the wall, faded faces smiling at a camera, frozen in a time before the city became a graveyard. A child's drawing hung askew, crayons depicting a house with a yellow sun. Now the sun outside was blood red through the dust. "Humidity's at 42%. Dutch Mercer's voice was barely a murmur beside her. "Winds shifted. Call it 3 clicks from the east now. Steady, but building." Ava didn't move her eye from the scope. "Copy." Dutch was old school in every sense. 64 years old with a face like worn leather and hands that had held a rifle before Ava was born. He'd been her spotter for 18 months now, and she'd learned more from him than from any training manual the Corps had ever issued. He had a way of reading the battlefield that no computer could replicate, intuition built on 4 decades of combat experience. The MK-13 Mod 7 felt like an extension of her body. 300 Winchester Magnum, effective range 1,200 meters. Current distance to target zone 940 meters. Well within her comfort zone. She'd made shots at 1,500 before, in worse conditions, but this one should be clean. Simple. 1 shot, 1 kill, mission complete. If only it felt that simple. "Target's late," she whispered. "Patience." Dutch adjusted his spotting scope fractionally, the movement so small it barely registered. "The rabbit always comes to the trap. Just takes time. Some rabbits are smart enough to check the perimeter first." Below them, the city sprawled in ruins. Aleppo, or what was left of it. Buildings stood like broken teeth against the sky, their facades stripped away by years of artillery and airstrikes. The Americans weren't supposed to be here, not officially, but high-value targets didn't respect international boundaries, and neither did scout snipers. This was shadow work, the kind that never made it into official reports. Ava's breath came slow and measured, in through the nose, out through the mouth. Heart rate steady at 55 BPM. The Corps had spent 2 years training her to become a weapon, to read wind like poetry, to calculate trajectory like mathematics, to kill like breathing. They'd stripped away everything that made shooting complicated and rebuilt it as pure instinct. "Movement," Dutch said. 10 o'clock, second structure, male, armed, moving with purpose. Ava shifted her aim. A figure emerged from the shadows, moving with the cautious gait of someone who'd survived too many close calls. Male, approximately 6 feet, carrying an AK pattern rifle. He paused at a corner, scanning, then moved into another building. "Not our guy," she said. "Negative. Low-value fighter, probably a sentry. Let him pass." Dutch made a note on his tablet, but his presence means something's happening in this sector. HVT might be close. The man disappeared into another building. Ava's finger never entered the trigger guard. Discipline. That's what separated snipers from everyone else. The ability to not shoot was as important as the ability to hit. Any fool could pull a trigger. It took a professional to wait for exactly the right moment. "Viper, You ever think about what happens when we're obsolete? Dutch's question came out of nowhere, his voice quiet and thoughtful. What do you mean? Saw a briefing last month. Autonomous targeting systems, AI-guided munitions, drones that can ID and engage without human input. He paused and Ava could hear something in his voice. Not quite fear, but uncertainty. They're talking about replacing scout sniper teams with unmanned systems, thermal imaging, facial recognition, all of it automated. We're dinosaurs, kid. We just don't know we're extinct yet. Ava frowned behind her scope. Nothing beats human judgment. Machines can't make the moral call, can't assess collateral damage in real time. That's what the cavalry said about tanks. That's what archers said about muskets. Dutch's tone was matter-of-fact. Every generation of warriors thinks they're irreplaceable. Then technology proves them wrong. You really believe that? I believe that war changes. Always has, always will. The question isn't whether we'll be replaced, it's whether what replaces us will be better. He shifted slightly, adjusting his angle. Because if it's not, if we hand over the trigger to machines that can't understand the weight of taking a life, then we've lost something important, something human. Ava considered this. She'd grown up with technology, had trained on systems that her father's generation couldn't have imagined. But there was still something sacred about the sniper's craft. The patience, the discipline, the moment of decision when you chose to end a life from a distance. We're not obsolete yet, she said finally. No, not yet. Dutch's voice carried a smile. But the future's coming faster than we think. They fell silent again, watching, waiting. The sun continued its slow crawl across the sky, shadows lengthening in the ruins below. Ava's body had gone numb hours ago, but she didn't move. Couldn't move. This was the price of the craft, becoming one with the weapon, with the position, with the moment. The sun crawled across the sky with agonizing slowness. Ava's legs had gone numb 2 hours ago, but she didn't shift position. Movement meant compromise. Compromise meant death. She'd learned that lesson the hard way during training, when an instructor had spotted her adjusting her position from 1,200 meters away. The dressing down that followed had lasted an hour. Dutch checked his watch for the 100th time. HVT's window closes in 90 minutes. After that, the neighborhood gets too hot. Local militia does sweeps at dusk. Their target was Karim al-Rashid, a logistics coordinator for a particularly nasty insurgent cell. Not a trigger puller himself, but the man who made sure the bombs got where they needed to go. Intelligence said he met his couriers in this sector every 72 hours like clockwork. 3 meetings, 3 successful interdictions. This was the 4th. Tell me the wind again, Ava said. Dutch read the mirage through his scope, watching the heat shimmer off the rubble. 3.2 meters per second from the east. Steady. Temperatures 38 Celsius. Falling as we approach evening. Barometric pressure holding at standard. Ava ran the calculations in her head. At this distance, the bullet would drop approximately 200 inches. Wind drift would push it another 6 inches right. She'd already dialed in the elevation. The windage was the variable. Always the variable. You're thinking too much, Dutch said, reading her mind like he always did. When the time comes, you'll feel it. Feel it? Since when did you get mystical on me? Since I put 5,000 confirmed kills on paper before you were born. He grinned, the scar on his cheek crinkling. There's math, and then there's knowing. You got the math down. Hell, you got it better than anyone I've ever trained. But now you need to trust your gut. Ava had heard this speech before. Dutch believed in what he called the shooter's instinct. That moment when all the training and calculation compressed into a single certainty. She'd felt it before. The absolute knowledge that the shot would land exactly where she intended. It was almost supernatural, that feeling. Like the universe itself was lining up to guide the bullet. She thought back to Quantico, to the scout sniper course that had nearly broken her. 89 days of hell. Out of 32 candidates who started, only 7 graduated. She'd been the only woman. The instructors had pushed her harder than anyone else, waiting for her to quit, waiting for her to prove their assumptions right. Every day was a test. Every shot was scrutinized. Every mistake magnified. But Dutch had been there. Not as an instructor, he'd retired years before, but as a guest lecturer brought in to share real-world experience. He'd watched her shoot, watched her calculate wind and distance with mechanical precision. Her scores were perfect. Her technique was flawless. And yet something was missing. After the range, he'd pulled her aside. "You shoot like a computer," he'd said, not unkindly. "Perfect math, zero soul." She'd been insulted. Her scores were the highest in the class. She was outperforming men who'd been shooting since childhood. "Scores don't mean shit in the field," Dutch had continued. "Out there, the wind doesn't follow formulas. The target doesn't stand still for your calculations. You need to feel the shot before you take it. Otherwise, you're just a machine pulling a trigger. And if that's all you are, then yeah, you will be obsolete. Because machines are getting better at being machines than we ever will be." It had taken months before she understood what he meant. The moment when calculation became instinct. When she stopped thinking and started knowing. Her first real-world shot, a Taliban commander at 1,100 meters in the mountains of Afghanistan. She'd run the numbers, dialed in the scope, then paused. Something felt wrong. The wind was supposed to be steady, but she could feel a shift coming. Not in the data, in her bones. She'd adjusted, compensated for a wind shift that hadn't happened yet, and when she fired, the bullet flew true because the wind had shifted exactly as she'd sensed it would. Dutch had just smiled and nodded. "Now you're a sniper." "Movement," Dutch said sharply, pulling her back to the present. "Center building, that's our boy." Ava's world narrowed to the reticle. A man in a dark jacket emerged from the building's entrance. Mid-40s, graying beard, moving with the confidence of someone who believed they were safe. He had a phone pressed to his ear, talking animatedly, gesturing with his free hand. "Confirm ID," Ava breathed. Dutch compared the figure to the photo on his tablet, zooming in with the spotting scope. Facial rec is 87%. Jacket matches the description. Gait matches previous surveillance footage. That's al-Rashid. Ava's heart rate dropped to 45. Her breathing synchronized with her pulse. The crosshairs settled on the target's center mass. This was the moment Dutch had taught her about, the stillness before the storm, the clarity that came when everything else fell away and only the shot remained. Wind check. 3.1, steady, no gusts, range, 942 meters. Angle correction, minimal. Her fingers slipped inside the trigger guard. The trigger pull on the Mk-13 was precisely 3.5 pounds. She applied 2 pounds of pressure, feeling the resistance. The target was still on the phone, unaware. Perfect exposure, clean shot. "Viper, hold!" Dutch's voice carried a warning edge. "Something's wrong." Ava held her breath, finger frozen at the breakpoint. Every instinct screamed to take the shot. Perfect conditions, perfect target. But Dutch didn't give warnings lightly. "Talk to me," she said. Dutch scanned the street through his scope, his eye never leaving the optics. "He's too exposed. Al-Rashid's a ghost, lives in safe houses, moves with security, never stays in one place more than an hour. He doesn't walk down Main Street like he's buying groceries and chatting on the phone." Now that Dutch mentioned it, Ava saw it too. The target was moving almost casually, pausing to look at his phone, completely unconcerned with the open sightlines around him. No quick movements, no checking corners, no awareness of his vulnerability. For a man who'd survived 4 years in a war zone, it was unnatural behavior. "Decoy?" she asked. "Maybe, or he's gotten stupid, but stupid doesn't survive this long." Dutch zoomed in on the surrounding buildings, searching for the thing that was making his instincts scream. No security, no overwatch, no counter-surveillance. This guy moves with at least 3 bodyguards. Where are they? Ava's instincts screamed wrong. In 18 months of hunting HVTs, she'd learned that the ones who survived were paranoid. They moved in shadows, varied their patterns, never stayed in one place long enough for a pattern to emerge. Al-Rashid had survived this long by being careful. This wasn't careful. This was reckless. "Check for electronic warfare," she said. Dutch pulled out their counter-surveillance detector. The small device was supposed to light up if enemy jamming equipment was active in the area. It remained dark and silent. "Nothing. Our comms are clean. No hostile RF signatures." But Ava couldn't shake the feeling. She'd learned to trust that little voice in the back of her head, the one that sounded suspiciously like Dutch during training. If it feels like a trap, it probably is. And if you spring the trap, you become the prey. "I'm calling abort," she said, easing her finger out of the trigger guard. "Your call, Viper. But we won't get another shot at this guy for weeks, maybe months. He's getting smarter, changing patterns. This might be our last chance." Ava watched the target through her scope. He stopped walking, pulled out a cigarette, lit it with deliberate slowness. He took a long drag, exhaled smoke into the dusty air. Then he did something that made Ava's blood run cold. He looked up. Not at their building specifically, but up, at the high ground, at the overwatch positions, like he knew someone was watching, like he was waiting for something to happen. Then she saw it. A glint of light from a building 300 meters behind their position. Just a flash, barely perceptible. But in the sniper world, that flash meant only one thing: optics catching the sun, glass reflecting light, a scope, a camera, eyes on their position. "Dutch, we've got counter-sniper, 7 o'clock, 300 meters, high ground." Dutch swiveled his scope smoothly, not rushed, still professional. "I don't see, wait, confirmed, 2nd floor, eastern window. That's definitely optics. Multiple signatures. This isn't a lone sniper, that's a team." Ava's blood ran cold. Someone was watching their position, which meant the man on the street wasn't the target. He was the bait, and they'd almost bitten. "We need to move, now, before they get a firing solution." Dutch was already packing their gear with the practiced efficiency of a man who'd done this 1,000 times. Every movement economical, nothing wasted. Ava kept her rifle trained on their back trail, covering their six while he worked. "How the hell did they make us?" Dutch muttered, breaking down his spotting scope and securing it to his pack. "We've been static for 6 hours, full camo, no movement, no RF signature. Doesn't matter how, we're burned. We move or we die." They'd rehearsed this a dozen times. Emergency egress from a compromised position. The apartment had 2 exits, the main door, which led to a hallway and stairwell, and a window that led to an external fire escape. Standard operating procedure was to avoid the obvious exits. The stairwell would be covered. The front door was a kill zone waiting to happen. Ava slung her rifle and moved to the window. The fire escape was rusted, probably hadn't been used in years. It would make noise. The metal would groan and possibly give way. But noise was better than walking into an ambush in a confined stairwell. "I'll go first," Dutch said, moving beside her. "Cover me. If I draw fire, you abort and find an alternate route." "Negative. We stay together." "Ava." "Not a debate, Dutch. We go together or not at all." She met his eyes. "You taught me that. Never leave your spotter." He studied her for a moment, then nodded. "Okay, but I'm still going first. Age and treachery beats youth and enthusiasm." He squeezed through the window frame with surprising agility for a man his age. The metal groaned under his weight, but held. Ava scanned the surrounding buildings through her scope, looking for any sign of movement, any muzzle flash, any indication they were being tracked. Nothing, just ruins and silence. Too quiet. The counter-sniper team should be repositioning by now. They should be coordinating, calling in support, moving to cut off escape routes. But there was nothing. No movement, no radio chatter that she could detect. It was like they were waiting for something. She was about to follow Dutch when she heard it. A sound that made her blood freeze and her training scream warnings. Bzzz. Not the buzzing of insects. This was mechanical, distant but growing closer. A sound she'd heard in briefings, in training videos, in classified threat assessments, but never in real life, never in the field. Drones. Dutch, we've got UAVs inbound, multiple contacts. His face appeared in the window, eyes wide. How many? Ava looked up through the shattered ceiling. The sky was darkening, but not with clouds. Dark shapes moved in formation, dozens of them, maybe more. They were blocking out the sun like a swarm of mechanical locusts, organized, coordinated, moving with unnatural precision. Too many. This isn't reconnaissance. This isn't even strike package. Her training tried to categorize what she was seeing and failed. This is a hunting pack. The drones moved with unnatural precision, sweeping the sector in a grid pattern that would make any tactical coordinator proud. Each one was small, maybe 2 feet across, quadcopter design with what looked like camera gimbals underneath. But Ava had seen footage of loitering munitions before. She knew these things could be equipped with explosives, or worse. They'd never been deployed in this quantity, not in any combat footage she'd seen, not in any briefings she'd attended. Our thermal camo is blown, Dutch said, his voice tight with realization. Those things are running FLIR, forward-looking infrared. They can see our heat signatures through the ghillie suits, through the walls. We're lit up like Christmas trees to those sensors. Ava's mind raced through tactical options. Standard doctrine for drone encounters was to take cover and wait for them to pass. Drones had limited battery life, limited loiter time. But these weren't passing. They were searching, methodically, professionally, like they had all the time in the world. One of the drones peeled away from the formation and dove toward their building. Ava could see the camera gimbal on its underside, tracking back and forth. The lens was high-grade, professional military equipment. This wasn't insurgent tech. This was first-world hardware. They're scanning for us, she said. Dutch pulled a small device from his pack, a portable electronic warfare jammer. Military grade, issued for exactly this scenario. Supposed to disrupt drone communications within a 100-meter radius. He activated it, the small LED blinking green to indicate operation. Nothing happened. The drone continued its approach, now hovering directly outside their window. Ava could see her reflection in its camera lens, could see the perfect detail of the sensor array. This thing was watching them with perfect clarity. The jammer's not working, Dutch said, disbelief creeping into his voice. It should be frying their command and control, should be forcing them into failsafe mode. They're using hardened frequency hopping, military spec encryption, probably mesh network communication so they don't rely on a single control frequency. Ava's hands tightened on her rifle. Whoever's running these things, they're not some insurgent cell cobbling together commercial hardware. This is professional, high-end, military or corporate development. The drone rotated, its camera focusing directly on them. For a moment, nothing happened. Ava could see her own face reflected in the lens, distorted and small. Then a speaker crackled to life from the drone's undercarriage. The sound quality was crystal clear. A voice, male, American accent, touched with amusement and something darker. Sergeant Kane, Master Sergeant Mercer, you're a long way from home. Ava and Dutch locked eyes. The voice knew their names, not just their call signs, their actual names. I've been waiting for you, the voice continued, conversational and calm. The famous Viper and her aging mentor. Tell me, Sergeant, do you still believe human skill beats machine precision? Because I've designed a little experiment to test that hypothesis. Dutch grabbed Ava's arm. We run, now. Don't engage, don't respond, just move. They hit the fire escape at a dead sprint. Behind them, the drone's speaker erupted with laughter. Not human laughter, but something synthesized, mechanical, cold. The sound of it made Ava's skin crawl. "You can't outrun the grid, Sergeant. I have eyes everywhere." The building's entrance was 50 feet away. Ava's boots hammered against rusty metal, each step a prayer that the ancient structure would hold. The fire escape swayed and groaned under their weight. Dutch was right behind her, breathing hard but keeping pace. For a man of 64, he could still move when he needed to. They reached the ground level and broke left, into a narrow alley between buildings. The drone followed effortlessly, its rotors whining as it matched their speed. It wasn't trying to attack, it was herding them, tracking them, feeding data to something else. Then the sky opened up, not with rain, but with fire. The first explosion hit the fire escape they just descended, tearing the metal structure away from the building in a shriek of tortured steel. Ava threw herself against a wall as shrapnel whizzed overhead, peppering concrete and brick. The concussion wave slammed into her back, driving the air from her lungs. "Artillery!" Dutch yelled, but that wasn't quite right. These weren't random shells. Each explosion was precise, targeted, walking toward them with mathematical certainty. Ava looked up and understood with horrible clarity. The drones weren't just watching, they were painting targets. Laser designation, GPS coordinates, real-time targeting data being fed to something beyond the horizon. Somewhere beyond the city, a fire support system was receiving coordinates in real time and adjusting its aim with every round. She'd read about this in classified briefings, network-enabled warfare, where sensors and shooters formed a seamless kill chain. The future of combat, the death of cover and concealment. "They've turned the whole city into a targeting grid," she said, horror dawning in her voice. "Every drone is a sensor node. They can coordinate fires anywhere in the sector." Dutch pulled her into a doorway as another explosion cratered the street where they'd been standing. The blast wave washed over them, carrying dust and heat and the smell of cordite. "We need hard cover, something that'll break their targeting lock, multiple layers between us and sky." Ava scanned their surroundings with tactical eyes. Most of the buildings were too damaged, their roofs collapsed, walls crumbling, insufficient mass to stop artillery. But there, 200 meters east, a parking structure. Concrete, multiple levels, designed to hold the weight of vehicles. It would block thermal imaging, would provide overhead cover against fires. "There," she pointed, "the garage, multi-level, reinforced structure." "That's a long run, 200 meters of open ground. You got a better idea?" Dutch checked his rifle, an M4 with a stubby barrel, designed for close quarters. Not much use against drones flying 50 feet overhead, but it gave him something to hold on to, something to fight with. "On three." "On three," Ava confirmed. They both knew this was bad. Running across open ground under observation was suicide. But staying here was certain death. At least running gave them a chance. "One," Dutch counted. "Two," Ava added. "Three!" They burst from cover together. They ran. Ava's lungs burned as her boots pounded concrete. Behind her, explosions tracked their movement with terrifying accuracy. The drones were feeding data faster than she could react, compensating for every dodge, every turn. Predictive algorithms calculating her next move before she made it. 50 meters to the garage. A drone dropped from the sky directly in their path, hovering at eye level. Not attacking, blocking. Ava didn't slow down. She raised her rifle and fired from the hip. 3 rounds, center mass. The drone exploded in a shower of sparks and plastic, but the shots had cost her momentum. 40 meters. Dutch stumbled, caught himself. His age was showing now, legs not quite keeping up with the sprint. "Keep moving, don't wait for me." 30 meters. Another explosion behind them, close enough that Ava felt the heat wash over her back. Shrapnel whistled past her head. She grabbed Dutch's arm, pulling him forward. Together. They'd make it together or not at all. 20 meters. The garage entrance yawned before them, a concrete mouth leading into darkness. Safety, cover, a chance to breathe. Ava dove through the opening, Dutch right behind her. They rolled into cover as an explosion tore apart the entrance, collapsing part of the ceiling. Concrete rained down, choking them with dust. For a moment, there was only silence and the ringing in Ava's ears. She tasted blood, had bitten her tongue during the dive. Beside her, Dutch was checking himself for wounds, running hands over his torso and legs with professional efficiency. "I'm good," he gasped. "You?" "Yeah, I'm good." They'd made it into the garage's lower level. No windows, no direct line of sight to the sky. The thermal signature would be diffused by layers of concrete above them. Multiple floors, multiple barriers. This would buy them time. Ava pulled out her tactical flashlight, sweeping the beam across their surroundings. The garage was a tomb of rusted cars and collapsed support pillars. Water dripped somewhere in the darkness, echoing off concrete. The air smelled of mold and decay and oil. "We need to get deeper," Dutch said, pulling out his own light. "Put more mass between us and those things. Find the lowest level." They moved cautiously into the structure's bowels, weapons up, clearing corners. Ava's every sense was on high alert. The explosion at the entrance had cut off their most obvious escape route, but there had to be other exits. Buildings like this always had multiple access points, vehicle ramps, pedestrian exits, maintenance tunnels. Dutch paused, listening. "Hear that?" Ava held her breath. There, a faint buzzing, muffled by concrete but still audible. The swarm was still searching, still hunting. They were methodical, patient, like predators who knew their prey was cornered and had nowhere to run. She activated her radio, switching to the emergency frequency. "Overwatch, this is Viper. We are compromised and under fire. Request immediate extraction." "How copy?" Static. She tried again, adjusting the frequency. "Overwatch, this is Viper. Emergency exfil requested. We are taking artillery fire from unknown source. Multiple UAVs in sector. How copy?" More static, then a voice, but not the one she expected. Not the calm, professional tone of their operations center. The same voice from the drone, the architect. "There's no extraction coming, Sergeant. Your communications relay was destroyed 12 minutes ago. Precision strike. One drone, one missile, perfectly placed." The voice was conversational, almost friendly. "You're alone in my playground now." Dutch grabbed the radio from her hand. "Who the hell is this? Identify yourself." "You can call me the architect. I've designed something special for you both. A question that needs answering. Can the human element survive when every advantage is stripped away?" The voice paused, and Ava could hear the smile in it. "Superior numbers, superior technology, perfect information. I have all of these. You have, what? Training? Experience? The famous human spirit?" Ava felt her jaw tighten. "What do you want?" "I want to prove a point. That warfare has evolved beyond the human soldier. That men like Master Sergeant Mercer here are relics. That even exceptional operators like yourself, Sergeant Kane, are obsolete in the face of proper automation." "You talk too much," Dutch growled. "Perhaps, but I have time. You don't." The voice became businesslike, efficient. "I'm looking forward to finding out how long the famous Viper survives. Quantico's top graduate, highest scores in sniper school history, youngest soldier to achieve master sniper rating, impressive credentials. But credentials mean nothing against perfect execution. Try not to disappoint me. The hunt begins now." The radio went dead. Ava looked at Dutch, seeing her own fear reflected in his eyes. They weren't fighting an insurgent cell or a conventional enemy. They were up against something new. Someone who controlled the drones, who had access to fire support, who knew their names and their histories. Someone who had resources and technology that shouldn't exist in a war zone. Someone who was hunting them for sport. "Dutch," she said quietly, "we're not the hunters anymore." He checked his rifle's magazine, his jaw set with grim determination. "Then we better learn to be prey real damn quick, and pray that being prey teaches us how to bite back." Above them, through the cracked ceiling, they could hear the buzzing. The swarm was still searching, still hunting. And somewhere in this ruined city, the architect was watching every move they made, confident in his technology, certain of his victory. But Ava hadn't survived 2 years of combat by accepting defeat. She'd survived by adapting, by finding advantages where none should exist, by being unpredictable when the enemy expected patterns. The architect thought he had all the advantages, but he'd made one critical mistake. He'd given them something to fight for: their lives, their mission, and the need to prove that humanity wasn't obsolete yet. The concrete pressed against Ava's back like ice. She could feel Dutch's breath beside her in the darkness, steady despite everything. Years of combat had taught him to control his breathing, even when his heart was racing. Above them, the buzzing continued, a mechanical lullaby that promised death. "We need to move deeper," she whispered. "Find a way out that doesn't involve walking back into that swarm." Dutch consulted his tactical map, the dim glow illuminating his weathered face. The lines around his eyes seemed deeper now, carved by decades of squinting through scopes and surviving impossible odds. "There's a maintenance tunnel system, old Soviet-era construction. These parking structures were built during the Cold War. They connect to the city's underground infrastructure, sewers, utility tunnels, maybe even old civil defense shelters. Should be an access point on the lowest level." "Sewers," Ava grimaced. "Of course it's sewers. Heat dissipates underground. Those thermal sensors won't track us through 6 feet of earth and running water. Our body heat will blend with the ambient temperature." He folded the map carefully, a habit from years before GPS made paper obsolete. "It's our best shot at going dark, dropping off the grid entirely." They moved through the garage's lower levels, descending deeper into the structure. Each level took them further from the sky, further from the drones, further from the architect's eyes. The air grew thicker, more oppressive. Ava's flashlight beam caught movement, rats scurrying away from the light, their eyes reflecting green. At least something else was alive down here. They found the access hatch in a service corridor, half hidden behind a collapsed wall and decades of accumulated debris. The metal was corroded, covered in rust and grime. The lock had been broken years ago, probably by scavengers or refugees seeking shelter. Dutch pulled it open with a screech of protesting metal, revealing a ladder descending into absolute darkness. The smell hit them immediately. Raw sewage, chemical waste, and something else, the sweet, sickly smell of decay. Something had died down there, maybe multiple somethings. "Ladies first," Dutch said with a grim smile. "Age before beauty, old man." Despite the situation, Dutch chuckled. It was a small sound, but it reminded Ava that they were still human, still alive, still capable of humor in the face of death. "Fair enough. If I fall, at least you'll have something soft to land on." He went down first, testing each rung before putting his full weight on it. The ladder was slippery with moisture and algae. Ava followed, her rifle slung across her back, using both hands to maintain her grip. The ladder went down 20 feet before her boots splashed into water. Cold water. Ankle deep and moving sluggishly. The current pulled weakly toward the south, following the ancient gradient of the city's infrastructure. Dutch's flashlight swept the tunnel. It was maybe 6 feet in diameter, concrete walls stained with decades of filth. The ceiling dripped with moisture that Ava tried not to think about. Every surface glistened with slime. Graffiti in Arabic covered parts of the walls. Territorial markings, warnings, prayers. Evidence that others had been down here before them. "Welcome to the Ritz," Dutch muttered, his voice echoing slightly in the confined space. They waded forward, weapons held high to keep them dry. The water pulled at Ava's boots with every step, threatening to drag her down. Something brushed against her leg, and she forced herself not to react. Just debris, just trash, just the detritus of a dead city flowing through its veins. Not rats, definitely not rats. "How far to the next access point?" she asked, her voice sounding strange in the enclosed space. Dutch checked his map, using a waterproof cover to protect it from the moisture. "Quarter mile. Should put us outside the immediate kill zone, beyond the effective range of those drones if they're battery-powered. Most quadcopters have maybe 30 minutes of flight time. We've been running for at least 15. Above them, muffled through layers of concrete and earth, they could still hear the drones. Fainter now but persistent, searching. The buzzing had become almost hypnotic, a constant reminder of the threat overhead. "You think he's still tracking us?" Ava asked. "The architect?" Dutch's jaw tightened. "Man like that doesn't give up easy. He's got resources, tech, probably sitting in some air-conditioned command center, watching this play out on multiple screens like it's a video game. We're entertainment to him. He said he studied me, my records, my training scores." "Which means he knows you don't quit either, that you'd rather die than surrender." Dutch paused, listening to the echo of their movement. "That's what this is about, not just killing us. He wants to prove something, wants to validate his worldview that humans are obsolete. We're his test subjects. That we're obsolete? That all the training, all the experience, all the instinct, none of it matters anymore?" Ava felt anger building beneath the fear. That machines are better? That we're replaceable? That all the things that make us human, intuition, adaptability, moral judgment, are just bugs in the system, inefficiencies that can be optimized away? Dutch's voice carried an edge of bitterness. "I've seen it coming for years. Every new tech advancement, every automated system, they're replacing us piece by piece. First it's logistics, then intelligence analysis, then fire support coordination. Now they're coming for the trigger pullers, for us." Ava thought about the drones, their perfect coordination, their tireless searching. No fear, no hesitation, no humanity to exploit, no mercy, no doubt, no moral weight to pulling the trigger, just algorithms and targeting solutions. "So how do we beat perfect?" she asked. Dutch was quiet for a moment, his flashlight beam cutting through the darkness ahead. Then, "We be imperfect in ways machines can't predict. We be human in ways that break the algorithm. We do the thing that doesn't make sense on paper, but works in reality." They walked for 20 minutes before Dutch called a halt. He pressed against the wall, breathing hard. His face had gone pale in the flashlight beam, sweat beading on his forehead despite the cold. "You okay?" Ava asked, though she could see he wasn't. "Yeah, just not as young as I used to be." He straightened, wincing. "Keep moving. We need to maintain momentum." But Ava had seen it, the way he'd favored his left leg, the slight hitch in his stride, the tremor in his hands that he was trying to hide. "Dutch, you're hurt." "It's nothing. Just a strain. Old war wound acting up." "Show me." He hesitated, then pulled up his pant leg. His calf was bleeding, a jagged cut from the shrapnel during their escape from the garage entrance. Not deep, but in this filth, in this toxic water, infection was a certainty. The wound was already showing signs of inflammation, the edges red and angry. "Jesus, Dutch, why didn't you say something?" "Because we had bigger problems." He lowered the pant leg, his jaw set. "Still do. I'll deal with it when we're clear, when we're safe, when we have the luxury of medical attention." Ava wanted to argue, but he was right. They had to keep moving. But she pulled out a field bandage from her kit anyway. "At least wrap it, keep the sewage out, reduce the infection risk." He accepted the bandage without protest, which told her how much pain he must be in. Dutch never accepted help unless he absolutely needed it. While he worked, Ava kept watch, her rifle trained back the way they'd come. The tunnel stretched into darkness, water reflecting their lights in oily swirls that created phantom shapes in her peripheral vision. "Done," Dutch said, standing. He tested his weight on the leg and grimaced. "Let's move." They continued through the labyrinth. The tunnel branched multiple times, each passage looking identical to the last. Without Dutch's navigation skills, Ava would have been hopelessly lost within minutes. He navigated by compass and instinct, choosing paths that led generally north, following the flow of water. "How do you know where we're going?" Ava asked. "I don't, not exactly, but these systems all flow downhill toward the river. We follow the current, we'll eventually find a way out, or at least a way to a different part of the city." He paused at a junction, considering. "Plus, I did a brief tour here in 2012, back when this was still a functioning city, studied the infrastructure maps. Never thought I'd actually need to use that knowledge." The water was getting deeper, up to their knees now, making each step an effort. Ava's legs ached from pushing through it. Her feet had gone numb from the cold. She tried to focus on something else, anything else. Counting steps, calculating distances, running through equipment checks in her mind. Then she heard it, a sound that didn't belong, a splash, behind them. Too loud to be a rat, too deliberate to be debris. She grabbed Dutch's arm, killed her flashlight. He did the same. They stood in absolute darkness, listening. The only sound was the drip of water and their own breathing, suddenly loud in the confined space. Another splash. Closer. Something moving through the water with purpose, with direction, coming toward them. "He sent something after us," Dutch whispered, his voice barely audible. Ava's mind raced. A drone? But how would it navigate down here? The tunnels were too tight, too irregular, too full of obstacles. Unless... "Not a drone," she breathed. "Something ground-based, something designed for this environment." The splashing continued, methodical and steady. Whatever it was tracking them, following their path through the water. Ava slowly unslung her rifle, flicking off the safety. The click seemed impossibly loud, echoing off the concrete walls. The splashing stopped. Silence. Just the drip of water in their own breathing. Waiting. Listening. Then a light blazed to life behind them. Brilliant white, LED intensity, blinding after the darkness. Ava threw up a hand to shield her eyes, squinting against the glare. Her vision filled with spots and shadows. Through the light she could make out a shape, mechanical, about 3 feet tall, moving on tracked wheels designed for water and mud. A camera turret swiveled toward them with mechanical precision, and mounted on top, a weapon. Small caliber, maybe 9mm, but in this confined space, deadly effective. "Robot," Dutch hissed. "Ground combat unit, probably based on EOD platform, modified for combat." The machine's speaker crackled to life. The architect's voice echoed through the tunnel, distorted by the acoustics but still recognizable. "Did you really think concrete would save you? That going underground would hide you from me?" The voice carried amusement. "I have assets at every level, Sergeant. Sky, ground, and now beneath the earth. I designed this hunt to be inescapable, every environment accounted for, every contingency planned." A pause, then almost casually, "Run." They ran. The water fought them with every step, but adrenaline pushed Ava forward. Behind them, the robot gave chase, its motors whining. It was faster in the water than they were, designed for exactly this terrain. Its tracks churned through the sewage with mechanical efficiency. "Split up," Dutch yelled over the sound of pursuit. "It can only follow one of us." "No, we stay together." "It can only follow one of us. Split up." His voice was command, not suggestion. The voice of a senior NCO who expected to be obeyed. They hit a junction. Dutch broke right without hesitation. Ava instinctively went left. She heard the robot pause, its camera turrets swiveling between them, processing, calculating, making a decision based on threat assessment or target priority or whatever algorithm controlled its actions. Then it made its choice. It followed Dutch. No! Ava turned back, but Dutch's voice stopped her. Keep going, I'll draw it off. Find the exit, complete the mission. She wanted to argue, wanted to go back, but Dutch was already disappearing down the tunnel. The robot followed, its light painting the walls. Then gunfire erupted, short, controlled bursts. Dutch was engaging, trying to damage the machine or at least slow it down. Ava forced herself to keep moving forward, even as everything in her screamed to go back. Trust the plan. Trust Dutch. He'd buy her time to flank, to get behind the robot, to find an advantage. That's what partners did. They created opportunities for each other. She found another junction, took it, navigating by sound. The gunfire had stopped. She heard Dutch's voice, shouting something. Couldn't make out the words. Then the robot's motors revving. Ava moved faster, splashing through water that now reached her thighs. The tunnel curved, and she saw light ahead. The robot's light, stationary now. She approached carefully, rifle raised, clearing angles. Around the corner she saw it. The robot had Dutch pinned in a dead-end section of tunnel. He was behind a concrete support pillar, wounded leg giving out. Blood was mixing with the water around him. The robot was advancing slowly, its weapon trained on his position, playing with him. Or perhaps being cautious, programmed not to waste ammunition. Hey! Ava shouted, her voice echoing off the walls. The robot's turret swiveled, fast, too fast for anything mechanical should move. It brought its weapon to bear on her position, and Ava threw herself sideways as bullets tore through the water where she'd been standing. The rounds sparked off the concrete walls, ricocheting in the confined space. She fired back, 3-round burst. The rounds sparked off the robot's armored chassis, but didn't penetrate. The thing was hardened against small arms fire. Center mass, Dutch yelled, his voice tight with pain. The camera housing, it's the weak point. Ava adjusted her aim. The robot was turning back toward Dutch, reassessing threats. She had one shot before it could bring its weapon to bear on him again. She fired. The bullet punched through the camera lens, and the robot shuddered. Sparks erupted from its chassis. Its turret spun wildly, weapon firing in random directions. Bullets stitched across the ceiling, the walls, tearing chunks from concrete. Then it stumbled, tracks losing coordination, and toppled sideways into the water. It tried to right itself, motors whining, but the water had gotten into its systems. More sparks, a grinding sound. Then it went still, half submerged in the filthy water. Its light still glowing, but its threat neutralized. Ava waded over to Dutch. He was holding his leg, blood seeping between his fingers. The bandage she'd applied earlier was soaked through, useless. I'm okay, he said before she could ask, but his face told a different story. It clipped me, just a graze, not bad. But it was bad. The wound was bleeding heavily, and his face had gone gray. Shock was setting in. Ava pulled out her medkit, her hands shaking despite her training. We need to stop the bleeding, apply pressure and get you stabilized. No time, more will come. That thing probably sent a signal before you killed it, reporting its status. The architect knows where we are now. Then we make time. Her voice was firm, brooking no argument. She packed the wound with gauze, applying pressure. Dutch gritted his teeth but didn't make a sound. Years of conditioning, of learning to operate through pain. When she finished, she wrapped it tight, using the last of her medical supplies. Can you walk? Can I walk? Kid, I can dance. He took a step and nearly fell. His leg buckled, the wounded limb unable to support his weight. Ava caught him. You're a terrible liar. It's a gift. He leaned on her heavily, and she could feel him trembling. Come on, we need to find that exit before the architect sends more toys. Before he locks down every escape route, they move together through the darkness, Dutch's weight slowing them down but not stopping them. Behind them, the disabled robot's speakers crackled one last time, degrading, water-damaged, but still functional. Impressive, Sergeant Kane. You continue to exceed my models. But the game has only just begun. You've won a battle, but the war is mine. The access ladder came like salvation. Ava spotted the rusted rungs leading up to a manhole cover, and for the first time in an hour, she felt something like hope. A way up, a way out, a chance to breathe air that didn't smell like death and sewage. There, she said, pointing. Dutch nodded, too exhausted to speak. The climb took forever. Ava went first, testing each rung. Some were loose, decades of rust making them unreliable. At the top, she pressed against the manhole cover. It didn't budge. Stuck, she called down. Put your back into it. Use your legs, not your arms. She braced her feet against the ladder and pushed with her legs. The cover groaned, then shifted with a scrape of metal on concrete. Light, actual daylight, streamed through the crack. She pushed harder and the cover scraped aside. Ava pulled herself up into an alley, immediately scanning for threats. Her rifle came up, checking corners, roof lines, windows. Empty. Just rubble and silence, and the remains of what had once been a thriving neighborhood. She reached down to help Dutch. He grabbed her hand and she hauled him up with all her strength. He collapsed against a wall, chest heaving, face pale and drawn. "Take 5, she said. "Take 10, hell, take 15. He closed his eyes, trying to catch his breath. "I'm getting too old for this shit. Should have retired years ago. Should be fishing somewhere, drinking beer, not crawling through sewers." Ava checked their position. They were in what looked like an industrial district, warehouses and factories, all abandoned. The buildings here were more intact than the residential areas, concrete and steel construction, built to last, built to withstand artillery and airstrikes. The sky was empty, no drones, but she knew that wouldn't last. They'd be searching, expanding their grid, looking for where their prey had surfaced. "We need to move to hardcover," she said. "Something with a roof, multiple exits, somewhere we can defend if we have to." Dutch opened his eyes. There, he pointed to a factory complex 200 meters away. Steel plant, thick walls, lots of metal to confuse sensors, multiple levels, good defensible position. They helped each other across the open ground, moving from cover to cover. Every shadow could hide a threat. Every sound made Ava's finger tighten on the trigger. They were exposed here, visible from above if the drones returned. They reached the factory without incident. The entrance was a massive rolling door, half open. Inside, the space opened into a cathedral of rust and decay. Furnaces lined the walls, cold for years. Overhead cranes hung frozen on their tracks. Dust motes danced in shafts of light from broken skylights. "This'll work," Dutch said, lowering himself onto a piece of machinery. "Help me with this leg. Need to change the dressing." Ava knelt beside him. The bandage was soaked through. She peeled it back and winced. The wound had gotten worse, edges inflamed and angry. The skin around it was hot to the touch. "It's infected already," she said. "That's sewer water. God knows what was in it." "I know." Dutch pulled out his canteen, poured water over the wound. He hissed in pain, his body going rigid. "Got any antibiotics in that kit?" She did, a small pack of pills meant for emergencies. She handed them over, and he swallowed 2 dry, his throat working. "That'll help, maybe, if the infection hasn't spread too far already." He looked at her seriously. "Ava, if I slow you down, if I become a liability, don't. Listen to me. If I become a liability, you leave me. You get clear and you report what's happening here. What this architect has deployed, the tech he's using, that's bigger than me, bigger than both of us." "I said don't." Ava's voice was hard. "We're both getting out of this. That's the mission. Extract together or not at all. Dutch studied her face, then nodded slowly. Okay, so what's the plan? Ava looked around the factory. We hold here, recover strength, figure out our next move. The architect wants to hunt us? Fine, but we choose the ground. We make him come to us. We turn his advantage into our advantage. With what assets? We've got maybe 6 magazines between us. No comms, no support, no reinforcements coming. We've got each other. Ava met his eyes. And we've got something he doesn't. What's that? Nothing left to lose, and everything to prove. They'd been in the factory for an hour when the speakers activated. Not from a drone or a robot, from the factory's old PA system, unused for years but apparently still functional. Someone had tapped into it remotely. The architect's voice boomed through the space, echoing off metal and concrete. Sergeant Kane, I'm impressed you've made it this far, truly. My models gave you less than a 30% chance of surviving the sewer insertion. You've exceeded expectations. Ava grabbed her rifle, scanning for the source. But there was no source. The voice came from everywhere at once, disembodied and omnipresent. Your file didn't do you justice. The records show skill, technical proficiency, high marks, but they don't capture the determination, the will to survive, the adaptability under pressure. A pause. But will is just another variable to be calculated, just another factor in the equation. Dutch positioned himself behind cover, weapon ready. He's trying to get in your head, psychological warfare, standard interrogation technique. Don't engage. Master Sergeant Mercer, the architect continued, his tone almost sympathetic. How's that leg? The infection should be setting in nicely by now. Sepsis takes about 6 to 8 hours in conditions like what you experienced in the sewers. Less if you're unlucky. And based on your elevated heart rate and respiration that my sensors are detecting, I'd say you're entering the early stages now. Don't listen to him, Ava said. I've analyzed your tactical patterns, Sergeant Kane. You're predictable in your unpredictability. You seek hard cover, you conserve ammunition, you prioritize your partner's safety over mission completion. These are weaknesses, exploitable ones. You care too much. It makes you vulnerable. The voice moved through the factory, speaker to speaker, creating the illusion of movement, of presence, like he was walking among them. Let me tell you how this ends. You're tired, injured, running low on supplies. I have unlimited resources. Drones, robots, artillery on call. Time is my ally. Every minute you spend hiding is a minute closer to collapse. Every hour Master Sergeant Mercer survives is an hour his body fights an infection it can't beat. Ava felt her jaw tighten. He was right. They couldn't win a war of attrition, but they didn't need to win. They just needed to survive, to find one opening, one mistake. But I'm not without mercy, the architect continued. Despite what you might think, I'm not a monster. I'm a scientist, an engineer. I'll give you a choice. Surrender now. Walk out with your hands up. Let me extract you safely. I'll even get medical attention for your friend. Real medical care. Antibiotics. Surgery if needed. He might live. He's lying, Dutch said, his voice firm. Or, the architect's voice turned cold, you continue this futile resistance, and I demonstrate exactly why human soldiers are obsolete, why flesh and blood can't compete with steel and silicon. Your choice. You have 60 seconds to decide. Starting now. The speakers went silent. Ava could hear Dutch's labored breathing in the stillness, could see the sweat on his face despite the cold. The infection was spreading faster than she'd hoped. What do you think? She asked quietly. I think he's a psychopath with a god complex who gets off on playing puppet master. Dutch checked his rifle, his hands steady despite his condition. And I think we tell him to go to hell. Even if it means... Ava, Dutch's voice was firm, carrying all the authority of his rank and experience. I've been a Marine for 43 years. I've served in more shitholes than I can count. Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, places that don't exist on official maps. And I've never surrendered. Not once. Not to enemy forces. Not to impossible odds. Not to my own fear. I'm not starting now. She felt a surge of pride. This stubborn, wounded old man who wouldn't quit even when he should, who would rather die on his feet than live on his knees. Okay then, she raised her voice, addressing the speakers. Architect, you listening? The speakers crackled. I am. Have you made your decision? Here's our answer. She raised her middle finger to the ceiling, her face hard. Come get us yourself, you coward. Stop hiding behind your machines and face us like a man. Silence. Then laughter. Cold, mechanical laughter that echoed through the factory, bouncing off every surface. Excellent. I was hoping you'd say that. I do so appreciate human spirit. It makes the hunt more satisfying. Let's see how long your defiance lasts when the full weight of my capabilities descends upon you. The speakers cut out. 30 seconds later, they heard it. The buzzing. Not from above, but from all sides. The ground, the walls, the ceiling. The swarm was coming, and this time, it wouldn't stop until they were dead. The first drone entered through a high window, its rotors creating a distinct whine. Then another, then 10. They filled the factory like wasps returning to a nest, their formation perfect, their coordination inhuman. Find cover, Ava yelled. They dove behind a furnace as the drones opened fire. Not with bullets, with small explosive charges mounted on their undercarriages. Each drone was a flying bomb, programmed to detonate on contact or proximity. One crashed into the furnace, exploding with a sharp crack. Shrapnel peppered the metal, leaving dents in scoring. The concussion rang in Ava's ears. Dutch fired his M4, tracking a drone across the space. His shot was perfect, hitting it midair. It exploded in a ball of fire and plastic, but there were too many. For every one they shot down, 2 more entered through the various openings. We can't hold this position, Dutch shouted over the noise. We're pinned. The maintenance tunnel, there. Ava pointed to a narrow passage between machines. Too small for the drones to follow effectively. They ran. Drones dove at them like mechanical falcons. Ava fired over her shoulder, dropping 3 in quick succession. Dutch was limping badly now, each step a visible effort. His leg was failing him. They reached the tunnel and squeezed inside. It was barely wide enough for their shoulders. The drones tried to follow but were too large. They hovered at the entrance, cameras glaring, trying to find an angle. That'll hold them for a minute, Dutch gasped, leaning against the wall. Maybe 2, then they'll find another way around. The tunnel led deeper into the factory complex. They emerged in a control room, walls lined with dead monitors and rusted control panels. One window overlooked the main floor. Through it, Ava could see the drones reorganizing. They weren't giving up. They were adapting, learning, adjusting their tactics based on what had worked and what hadn't. They're learning, she said, horror in her voice. The architect's adjusting his tactics in real time. Machine learning. He's using us to train his algorithms. Dutch slumped against a wall. His face was ashen now, lips tinged blue, signs of advancing shock. Ava, I need to tell you something, while I still can. Save your strength, don't talk. No, listen. He grabbed her arm with surprising strength. If I don't make it, and we both know the odds aren't good, I want you to know. You're the best shooter I've ever trained. Better than me at my peak. Better than anyone I served with in 43 years. You're making it. We both are. What you do next, that's up to you. But whatever it is, I know you'll make it count. You'll complete the mission. You'll stop this bastard. His eyes were intense, burning with fever and determination. Promise me. Ava felt tears sting her eyes. Don't talk like that. You're not dying in some factory. We're all dying somewhere. At least this is interesting. He smiled weakly. At least it matters. Outside, the drones were massing, dozens of them now, organized in attack formation, waiting for orders from their controller. Then the speakers crackled again. Touching moment, Sergeant, but it changes nothing. You're cornered. No escape routes. No backup. In approximately 5 minutes, I'll send in the swarm. They'll overwhelm your position through sheer numbers. You might take down 10, 20, but you can't stop them all. Mathematics doesn't lie. Ava's mind raced. He was right. They couldn't win this fight conventionally, which meant they needed to change the game entirely. Unless, the architect continued, you'd like to reconsider my offer. Surrender. Save your friend's life. All you have to do is walk out with your hands up. Medical care, safety, survival. It's really a very reasonable offer. Ava looked at Dutch. He was fading fast. Another hour and the infection might kill him regardless of what she did. But Dutch shook his head firmly. Don't you dare. Don't you give this son of a bitch the satisfaction. I won't let you die. Then don't let me die for nothing. He squeezed her hand with what strength he had left. Make this bastard regret hunting us. Make him understand that humans don't quit. We don't surrender. We fight until there's nothing left to fight with. Ava stood, walked to the window. She could see her reflection in the glass. Exhausted, filthy, running on fumes, but not broken. Not yet. Never broken. Architect, she called out, her voice steady. You said you studied me, my training, my missions, my psychological profile. But did you study what I learned? Enlighten me. I do enjoy a good monologue before the finale. I learned that machines are predictable. They follow patterns, protocols, decision trees. They do what they're programmed to do, nothing more, nothing less. She turned from the window. But humans? We're unpredictable, especially when we're desperate, especially when we have nothing left to lose. Is that supposed to frighten me? No. Ava checked her rifle, her expression hardening. It's supposed to warn you, because you forgot the most important lesson of warfare, which is, the most dangerous opponent is the one who's already decided to die, because they have nothing left to lose and everything to take with them. The factory's layout was burned into Ava's memory now. Every exit, every choke point, every piece of cover, every potential firing position. She'd spent the last 30 minutes planning while Dutch rested, using the tactical visualization skills they drilled into her at Quantico. Here's what's going to happen, she said, showing him a crude map she'd sketched on a piece of paper. I'm going to create a diversion. Draw the swarm away from this position. Lead them on a chase through the complex. And then what? They run out of battery and fall from the sky? Then you slip out through the loading dock. It's 300 meters to the tree line at the edge of the industrial zone. You can make it if you move now while they're focused on me. Dutch's eyes narrowed. While you do what? Play hero? Sacrifice yourself so I can limp away to safety? While I buy you time. Give you a chance to escape and report what's happening here. That's suicide. You'll be torn apart. That's the mission. Ava met his gaze. Someone gets out. Someone tells the brass what's happening here, what this architect has deployed, the tech he's using, the implications for future warfare. That intelligence is worth more than both our lives. Ava, it has to be you, Dutch. You have the experience, the credibility, the contacts at the Pentagon. They'll listen to you in ways they won't listen to a sergeant. She pressed her spare ammunition into his hands. I'll hold them as long as I can, but you need to run and not look back. Dutch tried to stand, failed. He was too weak. The infection had spread further, faster than either of them had hoped. Even sitting still, his breathing was labored, his skin clammy with fever. I can't, he said finally. the admission costing him. Not like this. I'm dying, Ava. We both know it. The infection's in my bloodstream. Even if we stopped it now with intravenous antibiotics and surgery, I've got hours, maybe less. You're not. I am, and that's okay. He smiled sadly, the expression of a man who'd made peace with his fate. But I'll be damned if I let you die for a corpse. Different plan. I create the diversion. You run. You report. You complete the mission. No, it's not a debate. I'm the wounded man, the logical sacrifice, the one whose death serves the mission. He pulled out a grenade, their last one. This, plus whatever time I can buy with my rifle, should give you a decent head start, maybe even take out a few of his drones in the process. Ava felt something break inside her. I'm not leaving you to die alone. Yes, you are, because that's what soldiers do. We complete the mission, even when it costs everything, even when it costs the people we care about. Dutch's voice was gentle but firm. I've had a good run, kid. 43 years in the Corps, more combat than anyone should survive. But this, going out fighting, buying time for my partner, completing the mission, that's a death worth having. That's an end with meaning. Dutch, please, I need you to do something for me. He pulled a battered photo from his pocket with shaking hands. My daughter, Claire, haven't seen her in 8 years. Stupid argument over stupid things, stupid pride on both sides. If you make it out, tell her I thought about her. Every day. Tell her I'm sorry I wasted so much time being stubborn. Tell her I love her. Ava took the photo with shaking hands. A young woman, maybe 25, with Dutch's eyes and his determined expression. I'll tell her, I promise. Good. He checked his rifle one last time, his movements practiced despite the tremor in his hands. Now get ready to run. When you hear the explosion, that's your cue. Don't stop, don't look back, don't hesitate. Just run and complete the mission. Outside, the drones were still waiting. Patient, mechanical, perfect. But inside the control room, two imperfect humans prepared to defy perfection one last time. Then Dutch gasped, his body going rigid. What is it? Ava asked, alarm in her voice. He was staring at something on the wall. An old electrical diagram, yellowed with age, covered in Cyrillic text. His finger traced a line with sudden intensity. The power grid, he said slowly, his voice gaining strength. This factory, it was still connected to the city's electrical system when it shut down. Emergency backup systems. Those drones, they're electric, battery-powered. They have to recharge somewhere. So every drone has a charging station, probably somewhere nearby. The architect would need a robust power source to keep them operational, to recharge between sorties. Dutch's eyes gleamed with sudden hope. What if we could overload it? Send a surge through the system? Ava looked at the diagram, her mind racing through the implications. It showed the factory's electrical layout, including the main transformer station. It would fry anything connected to the grid, any equipment drawing power, including those drones, including the charging stations. Dutch smiled despite his pain. And maybe, just maybe, disrupt the architect's control systems. Create an electromagnetic pulse that knocks out his entire network. It was insane. It was desperate. It was their only chance. How do we trigger a surge? Ava asked. Dutch pointed to the diagram with a trembling finger. Main transformer. It's in the basement sublevel. We short-circuit it with enough metal, create a feedback loop. It'll cascade through the system, blow the whole grid in one massive pulse. That could kill us too. The EMP could fry anything electronic within range. Kid, we're already dead. This just gives us a chance to take the enemy with us. He struggled to his feet, using the wall for support. Come on, let's go ruin this bastard's day. The basement access was through the factory floor, which meant crossing directly through the swarm's line of sight. 200 feet of open ground under observation. On 3, Ava whispered, checking her rifle. We go fast and we don't stop, no matter what. Can't stop if you're already dead, Dutch muttered, his gallows humor still intact. That's my new motto. Should put it on my tombstone. 3, 2, 1, go! They burst from cover. The drones reacted instantly, the swarm converging on their position. Ava fired as she ran, each shot precisely placed. 1 drone, 2, 3. Dutch was beside her, slower but keeping pace through sheer willpower. The basement stairs were 50 feet away, 40, 30. A drone detonated behind them, the blast throwing them forward. Ava rolled with the impact, came up running. Dutch wasn't as quick. He stumbled, went down on one knee, his wounded leg finally giving out. Dutch! Keep going! He fired at the pursuing drones, giving her cover, buying her seconds with his life. Ava reached the stairs, turned back. Dutch was up again, limping hard, but moving. 20 feet away. 15. She provided covering fire, dropping drones as fast as she could acquire targets. Another drone dove at them. She shot it out of the air, the explosion raining debris. Shrapnel scored her cheek, drawing blood. Dutch reached the stairs. They tumbled down together into darkness, leaving the swarm behind. The basement was pitch black. Ava activated her flashlight, sweeping the beam across concrete walls and ancient machinery. The air was thick with dust and the smell of old oil and decay. The transformer, Dutch said, consulting the diagram with shaking hands, should be through there, central chamber. They moved deeper into the basement. Above them, they could hear the drones searching, unable to follow into the confined space. Yet, they'd find another way. They always did. The transformer room was a vault of electrical equipment, massive coils wrapped in copper, circuit breakers the size of coffins, cables as thick as Ava's arm, everything covered in decades of dust, but still potentially functional. This is it, Dutch said, his voice weak. We short-circuit the main coil, the whole system overloads, creates a cascade failure that blows out through the grid. How? He pulled out his knife with a trembling hand. We jam as much metal as we can into the primary conductor. Then we throw the breaker. He looked at her, his eyes clear despite the fever. It's going to arc. Big, massive electrical discharge. We need to be behind cover when it goes. Something grounded. They worked quickly, stripping cable, jamming metal tools into the coil housing. Dutch's hands shook, but he worked with the focused intensity of a man running on pure will and borrowed time. That should do it, he finally said. Now we just need to throw the main breaker. The breaker was a massive lever on the far wall, red, with faded warning signs in Russian and English. Danger, high voltage, do not operate. Ava moved toward it, but Dutch grabbed her arm. Wait! His grip was weak, but his intent was clear. Ava, there's something else. That surge, it's going to be massive. Enough to disrupt the drones, yes, but also enough to create an electromagnetic pulse. Strong enough to fry anything electronic within a kilometer radius. Including the architect's control systems? Maybe, if he's close enough. If he's running his operation from within the affected area. Dutch's expression was grim, but also including any implanted medical devices, pacemakers, defibrillators, anything like that. Ava understood with horrible clarity. You have a pacemaker. Got it 3 years ago. Ticker wasn't what it used to be. He smiled, the expression peaceful. The EMP will stop it, probably permanently. My heart will stop beating within seconds. Then we find another way. There is no other way. Dutch's voice echoed in the chamber. This is it, our one shot at survival, at completing the mission. And I'm already dead, remember? The infection's in my bloodstream. Even if we stopped everything right now, even if we had a medevac waiting outside, I've got hours, maybe less. I can feel it spreading, feel my body shutting down. Dutch, listen to me. You pull that lever, you fry the swarm, and maybe, just maybe, you knock the architect offline. You get a window to escape, to complete the mission, to tell the world what's happening here. He pressed something into her hand, the photo of his daughter. This is bigger than me, than both of us. That bastard up there, he's got tech that could change warfare forever, make human soldiers truly obsolete. Someone needs to report that. Someone needs to stop him. And that someone is you. Ava's vision blurred with tears. I can't kill you. You're not killing me. I'm already gone. The infection will kill me in a few hours. The drones will kill me in a few minutes. You're giving me a choice in how I die. A death that matters. A death that means something. He pulled her into a brief, fierce hug. You're giving me the most important thing a soldier can have. A death with purpose. Thank you for that. He released her and moved to the breaker. His hand rested on the lever, steady despite everything. Dutch, wait. It's been an honor, Viper. An honor and a privilege to serve with you. He looked back at her one last time, his expression calm. Give him hell. Complete the mission. And tell Claire I'm sorry. He threw the breaker. The world turned white. Lightning arced through the transformer room, 1,000,000,000 volts finding ground through improvised conductors. The sound was apocalyptic, thunder compressed into a concrete box, magnified by the enclosed space. Ava dove behind a support pillar, shielding her eyes from the flash that was bright enough to burn after images into her retina. Dutch stood at the breaker, body rigid as electricity coursed through the system. For one horrible moment, he was silhouetted against the arc, a statue of defiance. His shadow stretched across the wall, larger than life. Then the lights died. The arcing stopped. Silence. Total silence except for the ringing in Ava's ears. Ava's ears rang. She couldn't hear anything except a high-pitched whine that filled her head. She fumbled for her flashlight, hands shaking despite her training. The beam found Dutch. He was on the ground, motionless. Ava ran to him, dropped to her knees. His eyes were open, staring at nothing. No pulse, no breath. His face was peaceful, like he'd simply fallen asleep. No, no, no. She started compressions, even though she knew it was useless. The EMP had stopped his pacemaker. His heart had stopped seconds later. He was gone before he hit the ground. He was gone. Ava pressed her forehead against his chest, grief threatening to overwhelm her. He'd sacrificed himself. For her. For the mission. Given his life to create an opening she had to exploit. Above, she heard something. Not the drones, they'd gone silent too. Something else. Something human. Screaming. Human screaming. Cursing. The sound of equipment failing. The architect. Ava stood slowly, wiping her eyes. The grief transformed into something else. Something cold and hard and focused. A clarity of purpose that cut through everything else. Dutch had given her a window. She wasn't going to waste it. She climbed the stairs, moving through the factory. The drones littered the floor like dead insects, their rotors still, their cameras dark. The EMP had fried every electronic system in range. Outside, the sun was setting, painting the ruins in shades of red and gold. And in the distance, maybe a kilometer away, she saw it, a mobile command vehicle, military-grade, satellite dishes on the roof. And from inside, she could hear shouting, cursing, the sound of someone whose perfect plan had just collapsed. The architect wasn't in some distant bunker. He was here, close enough to maintain low-latency control of his swarm, close enough to monitor everything in real time. Just like Dutch had theorized, he'd needed to be on site to run his perfect hunt, to maintain the bandwidth needed for his complex coordination, which meant he was vulnerable. Ava checked her rifle. 4 rounds left. She'd make them count. She'd make every single one mean something. She started walking toward the command vehicle. Not running, walking. Steady, purposeful, like death itself approaching. The architect had turned her into prey, had hunted her through his technological playground, had killed Dutch. Now it was her turn to be the predator. She reached the vehicle in 10 minutes. The door was open. Inside, banks of computers, screens showing dead feeds, and a man frantically working the controls, trying to reboot systems, trying to restore his perfect network. He looked up as she entered, mid-40s, glasses, thin frame, not what she expected. He looked more like an engineer than a soldier, more like someone who'd never held a rifle, never looked another human in the eyes as they died. "You," he said, genuine surprise in his voice. "But the systems, the drones, how did you—" "Are dead. You relied too much on technology, forgot that low-tech solutions still work." Ava raised her rifle, aiming at his center mass. Should have kept a backup plan, should have remembered that humans adapt. The architect's face twisted with anger. "You destroyed months of work, years of development, millions of dollars in equipment. Do you have any idea what you've done?" "I survived." Ava's finger rested on the trigger. "That's what humans do. We adapt, we improvise, we overcome. Something your perfect machines will never understand." "Wait," he raised his hands, his bravado cracking. "We can talk about this. I have resources, connections. I can make you rich, famous. I can give you anything you want. Money, power, access to technology you can't imagine. Just let me live and—" "You killed my friend. He was dying anyway. The infection would have—" "He died on his feet, fighting, with purpose and meaning." Ava's voice was ice. "That's more honor than you'll ever have. You wanted to prove humans were obsolete. You failed. We're still here, still fighting, still refusing to quit." The architect lunged for a pistol on the console. Ava fired once. Center mass. The shot was perfect, exactly as Dutch had taught her. One shot, one kill. He dropped without a sound. She stood over him, watching the light fade from his eyes. It should have felt like victory. It just felt empty, hollow. Dutch was still dead. The architect's death didn't bring him back. She turned to leave, then stopped. The computers, they contained everything. The architect's designs, his contacts, his funding sources. Intelligence that could prevent this from happening again. That could help the military understand and counter this technology. She pulled a thumb drive from her pocket, force of habit, always carry storage, and started downloading. The systems were damaged, but still functional enough to access files. Technical specifications, communication logs, financial records, everything. Outside, she heard vehicles approaching, friendly ones. The EMP had fried the architect's communications blackout. Her people had finally gotten through, located her position. Extraction team. Finally. Too late to save Dutch, but in time to save her. But as Ava looked at the data downloading, she felt no relief. Only the weight of what it had cost. Dutch was dead. The architect was dead. And the question that had started this nightmare, man versus machine, still didn't have a clean answer. Maybe it never would. Maybe that was the point. The struggle between human and machine wasn't meant to be resolved. It was meant to push both forward, to make humans more adaptable and machines more capable. An endless evolution driven by competition. The download finished. Ava pocketed the drive and walked out of the command vehicle, toward the sound of American voices, towards safety, toward a future she'd have to face without Dutch. But part of her would always be back in that factory basement, watching Dutch make his final stand, watching him prove that humans weren't obsolete yet, that courage and sacrifice still meant something in a world of algorithms and autonomous weapons. Some prices were too high, even for victory, but some deaths had meaning. And Dutch's death had saved her life and potentially changed the future of warfare. She'd make sure the world knew that. She'd make sure his sacrifice meant something. That was her mission now, her purpose, and she'd complete it no matter what it took. For Dutch, for all the soldiers who'd fought and died, for the humanity they defended. The extraction team found her sitting on the hood of the command vehicle, rifle across her lap, staring at nothing. Staff Sergeant Marcus Webb approached cautiously, his team fanning out in tactical formation around the perimeter. "Viper?" His voice was careful. The tone you use was someone who might be in shock. "Sergeant Kane, are you injured?" Ava looked up slowly. Webb was a good man. Career infantry, 3 tours, knew his job. She'd worked with his team before, trusted them as much as she trusted anyone in this business. "I'm fine," she said, her voice flat. "Dutch didn't make it." Webb's expression tightened. "Where is he?" "Factory, basement level. He gave his life to create an EMP, took out the drone network." She stood, feeling every ache in her body. "We need to secure his body, bring him home." "We will, I promise." Webb gestured to his medic. "But let Doc check you out first. You look like you've been through hell." "I have." Ava allowed the medic to examine her. Cuts, bruises, dehydration, mild hypothermia from the sewers. Nothing life-threatening, nothing that wouldn't heal. The physical wounds, anyway. While the medic worked, she told Webb everything. The ambush, the drones, the robot in the sewers, the architect, the EMP, Dutch's sacrifice. She kept her voice professional, clinical, reporting facts like she'd been trained. But inside, she felt hollow. "Jesus Christ," Webb said when she finished. "This is bigger than a single op. This is strategic-level intelligence. We need to get you back to base immediately. Debrief with command." "There's more." Ava pulled out the thumb drive. "Everything's on here. The architect's designs, his contacts, his funding, technical specifications for the drones, the ground units, the coordination software, all of it." Webb took the drive like it was made of gold. "This could change everything. Give us insights into autonomous warfare systems that are years ahead of anything we've seen." That's why Dutch died. To get this intelligence. To stop this technology from spreading. Ava's voice cracked slightly. "Don't let it be for nothing." "We won't. I swear it." Webb called over his communications specialist. "Get on the horn. Priority Alpha. Tell command we need immediate air evac and a full technical team. And secure the factory basement. There's KIA to recover." The team moved with practiced efficiency. 2 soldiers accompanied by the medic went to retrieve Dutch's body. The communications specialist established contact with higher command. The others set up a defensive perimeter, ready for threats that no longer existed. Ava watched them work, feeling disconnected from it all, like she was observing from outside her own body. This was shock, she knew. Combat stress, the adrenaline wearing off and leaving nothing but exhaustion and grief. "Here," Webb handed her a canteen and an MRE. "Eat, drink, that's an order." She obeyed mechanically. The water tasted like chemicals. The food tasted like cardboard. But her body needed fuel, so she forced it down. 20 minutes later, they brought Dutch out on a stretcher, covered with a poncho. Ava stood as they passed, coming to attention despite her exhaustion. Webb and his team did the same. A moment of respect for a fallen warrior. "He was a good man," Webb said quietly. "One of the best I ever served with." "He was." Ava's voice was barely a whisper. "He taught me everything, not just shooting, but how to think, how to survive, how to be a soldier." Then he died doing what he did best, passing on his knowledge, completing the mission. Webb put a hand on her shoulder. "That's the best death a soldier can ask for." Ava wanted to argue, wanted to say that Dutch deserved to retire, to go fishing, to spend time with his daughter. But Webb was right. Dutch had died the way he'd lived, fighting for something bigger than himself. The helicopter arrived 30 minutes later, a Black Hawk, rotors churning the dusty air. They loaded Dutch's body first, then Ava climbed aboard. As the helicopter lifted off, she looked down at the factory, the command vehicle, the ruins of the city. From up here, it all looked so small. The battlefield where she'd fought for her life reduced to a few city blocks. The technology that had nearly killed her reduced to scattered debris and dead drones. But the implications were huge. The architect had proven that autonomous warfare was possible, effective, deadly. Even though he'd failed to kill them, he'd succeeded in demonstrating the future of combat. And that future was terrifying. The debriefing lasted 6 hours. Ava sat in a sterile conference room at the forward operating base, surrounded by officers who wanted every detail. They recorded everything, asked her to repeat sections, questioned her estimates and observations. Colonel Sarah Morrison led the debrief. Intelligence officer, sharp mind, no patience for bullshit. She'd been in the game long enough to know when someone was telling the truth. "Let me make sure I understand," Morrison said, reviewing her notes. This architect had operational control over at least 50 autonomous drones, ground-based combat robots, and access to precision artillery, all coordinated through a centralized AI system. "That's correct, ma'am." Ava's voice was hoarse from talking. "The drones communicated through a mesh network. Take out one, the others adapt. They learn from our tactics in real time." "And the EMP knocked out the entire network?" "Yes, ma'am. Master Sergeant Mercer theorized that the architect needed to be close to maintain low-latency control. The EMP had approximately 1 kilometer radius. It caught him in the blast zone." Morrison exchanged glances with the other officers. "That's concerning. If he could run this operation from a mobile command vehicle, that means the technology is portable, deployable, not tied to fixed infrastructure." "Yes, ma'am. That's my assessment as well." "And the technical specifications on the drive?" Major David Chen, the technical intelligence officer, leaned forward. "You're certain it's complete?" "As complete as I could make it in the time I had, sir. I downloaded everything I could access before the extraction team arrived. Design files, communication protocols, funding sources, contact lists, everything." Chen smiled for the first time. "This is a gold mine, Sergeant. With this, we can reverse engineer their systems, develop countermeasures, track the funding network. This is the biggest intelligence coup in autonomous warfare we've ever had." "Good." Ava felt a small measure of satisfaction. "Then Dutch didn't die for nothing." The room fell silent. Morrison's expression softened slightly. "Master Sergeant Mercer's sacrifice will be recognized, Sergeant Kane. I'm recommending him for the Medal of Honor. His actions went far beyond the call of duty." "He deserves it, ma'am. He saved my life, multiple times, and he gave his life to complete the mission. We know, and we won't forget." Morrison closed her file. "Sergeant Kane, you're being pulled from active duty effective immediately. Medical leave, mandatory psych eval, and then we'll see where you're at. No arguments." Ava wanted to protest, wanted to get back in the field, but she was exhausted, physically, mentally, emotionally. She needed time, time to process, time to grieve. "Yes, ma'am, understood." "Good, now get some rest. You've earned it." Ava stood, came to attention, saluted. The officers returned it. As she turned to leave, Morrison called out, "Sergeant Kane, one more thing." "Yes, ma'am?" "You did good out there. Against impossible odds, you survived. You adapted. You completed the mission. That's what makes you a soldier. Not the technology you use, but what you do when the technology fails." Morrison met her eyes. "Don't ever doubt that." "Thank you, ma'am." Ava left the conference room and walked through the base. Soldiers moved around her, going about their duties. Normal, routine, like the world hadn't just changed. But it had changed. The architect had proven that autonomous warfare was viable. And even though he was dead, his ideas would live on. Someone else would pick up where he left off. Someone else would try to perfect what he'd started. The question was whether humanity could adapt fast enough to keep up. 3 days later, Ava sat in a quiet room on base, staring at a blank piece of paper. She'd been sitting here for an hour trying to find the words. She had to write to Claire, Dutch's daughter, had to tell her what happened. But how do you tell someone that their father died saving your life? How do you convey the weight of that sacrifice? Finally, she started writing. Dear Claire, you don't know me, but I served with your father. Master Sergeant Dutch Mercer was my spotter, my mentor, and my friend. I'm writing to tell you that he died 3 days ago in the line of duty. I wish I could tell you it was quick and painless. I can't, but I can tell you it was meaningful. He gave his life to save mine and to complete a mission that may have changed the future of warfare. His sacrifice prevented dangerous technology from falling into the wrong hands. In his final moments, he asked me to tell you something. He said he thought about you every day, that he was sorry for the years you spent apart, that he loved you more than anything, and he wanted you to know that even though he couldn't say it in life, he hoped you'd forgive him. Your father was the best soldier I ever served with. He taught me not just how to shoot, but how to think, how to survive, how to be human in a world that increasingly values machines over men. He proved that courage, sacrifice, and human judgment still matter, that we're not obsolete yet. I'm enclosing the photo he carried of you. He kept it with him always, even in the worst conditions. You were his reason for fighting, his reason for hoping, his reason for believing that the world was worth saving. I'm sorry I couldn't save him. I'm sorry you didn't get the chance to reconcile. But I promise you this, his death meant something. It saved lives. It protected the future. And I'll spend the rest of my life trying to honor his memory. If you ever want to talk, to know more about his final days, please reach out. I owe him that much. I owe him everything. With deepest sympathy, Sergeant Ava Kane. She sealed the letter, addressed it, and took it to the mailroom. Sending it felt like closing a chapter, like acknowledging that Dutch was really gone. Walking back to her quarters, she passed the memorial wall. Names etched in stone, soldiers who'd given their lives. Soon, Dutch's name would be added to that wall. Another casualty, another sacrifice. But to Ava, he'd never be just a name on a wall. He'd be the man who taught her to trust her instincts, who believed in her when others doubted, who gave his life so she could complete the mission. She'd carry that weight forever. And maybe that was okay. Maybe that's what it meant to be human in an age of machines, to carry the weight of the fallen, to remember their sacrifices, to ensure they weren't forgotten. The Pentagon briefing room was packed. Officers, civilians, contractors, intelligence analysts. Everyone who needed to understand the threat that autonomous warfare represented. Ava stood at the podium, wearing her dress uniform, medals gleaming. She'd been promoted to staff sergeant, had received a Silver Star for her actions, but the recognition felt hollow without Dutch there to share it. The architect's technology represents a paradigm shift in modern warfare, she said, her voice steady. He demonstrated that autonomous systems can hunt, coordinate, and adapt in real time, but he also demonstrated their limitations. She clicked to the next slide. His drones were vulnerable to electromagnetic pulse. His ground units couldn't navigate complex terrain without support. And most importantly, his systems couldn't adapt to truly unpredictable human behavior. They could learn from patterns, but they couldn't understand desperation, couldn't predict sacrifice. Colonel Morrison nodded from the front row, encouraging her to continue. Master Sergeant Mercer understood this. He recognized that the most effective counter to autonomous systems isn't better technology, it's better humanity, better judgment, better creativity, better willingness to do the unexpected. Ava paused, looking at the audience. The architect failed because he believed humans were predictable, that we could be reduced to algorithms and probability curves. But humans are more than our patterns. We're our choices, our sacrifices, our refusal to accept defeat even when the odds are impossible. She clicked to a photo of Dutch. The image showed him smiling, younger, before the years had worn him down, before the wars had taken their toll. This man proved that we're not obsolete, that human soldiers still have a place in modern warfare. Not because we're better at shooting, or tactics, or strategy. Machines may eventually surpass us in all those areas, but because we understand something machines never will. We understand why we fight, what we're willing to die for, and what's worth preserving. The room was silent. Ava felt emotion rising but pushed it down. This wasn't the place for grief. This was the place for truth. The architect is dead, but his ideas will live on. Others will try what he tried. They'll build better drones, better AI, better autonomous weapons. And we need to be ready, not just with countermeasures and electronic warfare, but with soldiers who understand that the human element is our greatest advantage. Soldiers who can think creatively, act decisively, and do the impossible when the mission requires it. She closed her presentation. Master Sergeant Dutch Mercer gave his life to prove that point. Let's make sure his sacrifice wasn't in vain. Let's make sure we never forget what makes us human. Thank you. The room erupted in applause. Ava stepped down from the podium, feeling exhausted but satisfied. She'd done what she promised. She'd honored Dutch's memory. She'd made sure his death meant something. Morrison caught her in the hallway. That was good, Kane. Really good. The brass is impressed. They want you to train the next generation of scout snipers. Teach them what you learned out there. I'm not sure I'm ready for that, man. You're ready, and you're the only one who can do it. You've seen the future of warfare. You fought against it and won. That knowledge is invaluable. Morrison's expression softened. Dutch trained you. Now it's your turn to pass it on. Ava thought about it. About standing in front of a classroom full of young soldiers, teaching them what Dutch had taught her. It felt right, like completing a circle. Okay, ma'am, I'll do it. Good, report to Quantico in 2 weeks. And Kane? Yes, ma'am. Make him proud. I will, ma'am, I promise. Quantico, Scout Sniper School. Ava stood in front of 30 candidates on the first day of training. They looked young, eager, confident, just like she'd been 3 years ago. My name is Staff Sergeant Ava Kane, she said, her voice carrying across the range. Some of you might have heard of me. Some of you might think that means I'll go easy on you. You'd be wrong. The candidates shifted. Good. They needed to understand this wasn't going to be easy. Scout sniper training is about more than shooting. It's about patience, discipline, judgment. It's about knowing when to take the shot and when to wait, when to engage and when to withdraw, when to follow the plan and when to throw the plan away and improvise. She paused, remembering Dutch's words. You're going to learn the math, the formulas, the ballistics and wind calculations, and all the technical skills. But that's not what makes you a sniper. What makes you a sniper is the moment when all that training becomes instinct, when you stop thinking and start knowing. One of the candidates raised his hand. Staff Sergeant, with all the new technology, drones, AI targeting systems, are snipers even going to be relevant in 10 years? Ava smiled. She'd been waiting for that question. Let me tell you a story, she said, about a man named Master Sergeant Dutch Mercer, about a hunt in a city full of autonomous weapons, and about why human soldiers will never be obsolete. She told them everything. The ambush, the drones, the sewers, the robot, Dutch's sacrifice, the EMP. She didn't sugarcoat it, didn't make it heroic or glorious. She told them the truth, that war was hell, that soldiers died, that sometimes the right choice was the one that cost everything. Dutch taught me that machines can calculate probabilities, but humans make choices, she concluded. Machines can follow algorithms, but humans can adapt. Machines can be perfect, but humans can be unpredictable. And in combat, unpredictable is often more valuable than perfect. The candidates were silent, absorbing the lesson. So yes, technology will advance. Yes, autonomous weapons will become more common. But you, human soldiers with human judgment and human courage, will always be necessary. Because at the end of the day, war isn't about machines. It's about people, about protecting what matters, about being willing to sacrifice for something bigger than yourself. She looked at each candidate in turn. That's what I'm going to teach you. Not just how to shoot, but how to think, how to survive, how to be the kind of soldier who can face impossible odds and still complete the mission. The kind of soldier Dutch was. One of the candidates, a young woman with determined eyes, spoke up. "Staff Sergeant, do you think we can live up to that standard?" Ava thought about it, about all the challenges ahead, about the future of warfare and humanity's place in it, about Dutch and his unwavering belief that humans still mattered. "I know you can," she said finally, "because I did. And if I can do it, any of you can. You just have to be willing to learn, willing to adapt, willing to do what's necessary when the moment comes." She picked up a rifle. "Now let's get to work. We've got a lot to cover, and I don't believe in wasting time." As the candidates moved to their positions, Ava felt something she hadn't felt in months. Purpose, direction, a sense that she was exactly where she needed to be. Dutch had trained her. Now she trained them, and they'd train the next generation. The cycle would continue. Human soldiers passing knowledge to human soldiers, ensuring that no matter how advanced the technology became, the human element would never be lost. 6 months after that first class, Ava stood at Arlington National Cemetery. Dutch had been laid to rest here with full military honors. The Medal of Honor had been awarded posthumously. His name would live forever among the nation's greatest heroes. Ava placed flowers at the headstone, simple white roses. Dutch would have appreciated the simplicity. "I did it," she said quietly. "Trained my first class. All 30 of them graduated. And I told them about you, about what you taught me. They'll carry that forward." The headstone was granite, simple and dignified. "Master Sergeant Dutch Mercer, United States Marine Corps, Medal of Honor." But to Ava, it didn't capture who he really was. It didn't show his humor, his wisdom, his unwavering belief in his soldiers. It couldn't convey the hours he'd spent teaching her, challenging her, pushing her to be better. "I met Claire," Ava continued, "your daughter. She came to the ceremony when they awarded you the Medal of Honor. We talked for hours. She wanted to know everything about you, about your final days, about what you said." She knelt, touching the cold stone. "She forgave you, said she'd forgiven you years ago but was too proud to reach out. She wishes she had, but she's grateful you thought about her, that you carried her photo, that you asked me to tell her." A light rain began to fall. Ava didn't move. The architect's technology is spreading. Other countries are developing their own autonomous weapons. It's an arms race now, human versus machine. But we're adapting, training soldiers to counter it, developing our own systems. The fight continues. She stood, saluting the headstone. "But I want you to know, you were right. Humans aren't obsolete. We're not algorithms and probability curves. We're courage and sacrifice and judgment. We're the ability to choose, to adapt, to do the impossible when necessary." The rain fell harder. Ava turned to leave, then stopped. "Thank you, Dutch, for everything, for teaching me, for believing in me, for giving your life so I could complete the mission. I'll never forget, and I'll make sure no one else does either." She walked away through the rain, past row after row of white headstones. Each one a soldier, each one a story, each one a sacrifice. But Dutch's story would live on, not just in reports and medals and official records, but in every soldier Ava trained, in every lesson she taught, in every time she reminded young soldiers that they were human, and that being human meant something. The architect had been wrong. Humans weren't obsolete. They were evolving, adapting, finding their place in a world of increasing automation. And as long as soldiers like Dutch existed, soldiers willing to sacrifice everything for their mission, their partners, their beliefs, Humanity would never lose that war. The briefing room was different this time, smaller, more secure. The people in it had the highest security clearances in the military. Ava stood at the podium again, but this time with a different mission. "We've tracked the architect's network," she said, displaying a map covered in red markers. 15 groups worldwide attempting to replicate his technology, 7 with operational prototypes, 3 with active deployment capability. General Patrick Hawthorne, Joint Special Operations Command, leaned forward. "Can we counter them?" "We can. We've developed comprehensive countermeasures based on the intelligence gathered from the original operation. EMP devices, signal jammers, cyber warfare protocols. But more importantly, we've trained personnel to think differently, to fight asymmetrically against autonomous systems." She clicked to the next slide. "The key isn't matching their technology, it's exploiting their limitations. Autonomous systems are predictable. They follow patterns. They optimize for efficiency. We teach our soldiers to be unpredictable, inefficient, to make choices that don't make sense from an algorithmic perspective, but work in reality." "You're talking about controlled chaos," Hawthorne said. "I'm talking about humanity, sir, about using our greatest advantage over ability to be irrational, creative, and adaptive. Machines will always be better at being machines, but humans are better at being human. We need to lean into that." The general nodded slowly. "And you think this will work?" "I know it will, sir, because it already has. Master Sergeant Mercer and I proved it. We defeated a technologically superior enemy by being unpredictable, by making choices no algorithm could anticipate, Byron being willing to sacrifice in ways that don't calculate. Then I want you to expand this program, train more soldiers, develop doctrine, make this the standard for counter-autonomous warfare operations." Hawthorne stood. "You've got carte blanche, Staff Sergeant. Build what we need." Ava felt the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders. This was bigger than one operation, bigger than Dutch's sacrifice. This was about the future of human soldiers in an increasingly automated world. "Yes, sir. I'll get started immediately." After the briefing, she walked outside into the Virginia sunshine. Her phone buzzed. A text from Claire. "Dad would be proud of what you're doing. Thank you for keeping his memory alive." Ava smiled. It was the first genuine smile she'd felt in a long time. She typed back, "He made it possible. I'm just following his example." The response came quickly. "Then you're doing exactly what he would have wanted." Ava pocketed her phone and looked up at the sky. Clear blue. No drones, no threats. Just peace, for now. But she knew the peace wouldn't last. The battle between human and machine would continue. Others would push the boundaries, test the limits, try to prove that automation could replace human judgment. And she'd be there to prove them wrong, to show that humans still mattered, that courage, sacrifice, and adaptability couldn't be programmed, that the warrior spirit couldn't be replicated by circuits and code. Dutch had started her on this path, had taught her that being human was an advantage, not a weakness. Now it was her turn to pass that lesson forward, to train the next generation, to ensure that no matter how advanced technology became, humanity would always have a place in warfare. Because at the end of the day, war wasn't about machines. It was about people, about protecting what mattered, about being willing to stand up and fight when everything seemed impossible. Dutch had understood that, had lived it, had died proving it, and Ava would spend the rest of her life honoring that truth. 5 years later, Ava stood in a different training facility, larger, more advanced, the product of the program she'd built. 200 soldiers stood at attention, men and women from every branch of service, the best of the best, selected for their adaptability, their creativity, their willingness to think outside the box. "Welcome to the Human Element Program," Ava said, now wearing the rank of captain. "You're here because you represent the future of warfare, Not because you're the best shots or the fastest runners or the strongest fighters. You're here because you understand that being human is an advantage. She walked along the ranks, making eye contact with each soldier. Technology will continue to advance. AI will get smarter. Autonomous weapons will become more capable, but they'll never have what you have. They'll never understand sacrifice, never feel fear and overcome it. Never make the impossible choice when logic says there is no choice. A massive screen behind her lit up, showing footage of autonomous weapon systems, drones, robots, AI-controlled vehicles. The future of warfare in stark digital clarity. These systems are impressive, dangerous, effective, but they have one critical flaw. They're predictable. They optimize for efficiency. They follow patterns. They do what makes sense. She smiled. Your job is to not make sense, to be unpredictable, to be human in ways that break their algorithms. She clicked to a photo of Dutch, the same one she'd shown to every class she trained. Master Sergeant Dutch Mercer proved this 5 years ago. He sacrificed himself to defeat a technologically superior enemy, not through better weapons or better tech, but through better judgment, better courage, better humanity. The soldiers listened intently. His sacrifice started a revolution in military thinking. It created this program. It changed how we train, how we fight, how we understand warfare in the 21st century. And every one of you carries that legacy forward. She paused, letting the weight of her words sink in. You're not here to compete with machines. You're here to remember that some things can't be automated. Leadership, courage, sacrifice, judgment. These are uniquely human qualities. These are what make you warriors, not just weapons. Captain James Rodriguez, her second in command, and a graduate of her very first class at Quantico, stepped forward. Sir, permission to speak? Granted. You've told us Master Sergeant Mercer's story, taught us his lessons. But what about your story? What did you learn from that operation that we should know? Ava considered the question. It was one she'd been asked before, but had always deflected. But these soldiers deserved the truth. I learned that humans are at their best when everything seems impossible, she said quietly. When the odds are against us. When logic says we should quit, that's when we find reserves of strength we didn't know we had. That's when we become more than the sum of our training and equipment. She looked at Rodriguez. I learned that the strongest weapon isn't the most advanced technology. It's the soldier willing to use whatever they have, even their own life, to complete the mission. Dutch taught me that, and I'll spend the rest of my career teaching it to others. Sir, a young lieutenant spoke up, do you think we'll ever reach a point where humans really are obsolete? Where machines can do everything we can? Maybe, Ava said honestly. Maybe someday AI will be advanced enough to replicate human judgment, human courage, human sacrifice. But I don't think that day is coming anytime soon. Because those qualities aren't just about processing power or programming. They're about being alive, about having something to lose, about caring. She gestured to all of them. Machines don't care. They calculate. They optimize. But they don't care. You do. And that makes all the difference. The training began after that. Months of intensive work, teaching soldiers not just how to fight autonomous weapons, but how to think differently, how to be unpredictable, how to use their humanity as an advantage. And at the end of each day, Ava would stand at the memorial they'd built on the facility grounds. A simple stone marker with Dutch's name and his final words. Give 'em hell. She'd salute, report on the day's training, tell him about the soldiers who were carrying his legacy forward. It was ritual, ceremony, a way to remember. But more than that, it was a promise, a commitment that his sacrifice would never be forgotten, that the lesson he'd taught, that humans still mattered, would be passed down through generations of soldiers. 10 years after the operation, Ava sat in her office at the Pentagon. Colonel now, Deputy Director of the Human Element Program. The program had expanded beyond anything she'd imagined. Thousands of soldiers trained, doctrine established, countermeasures deployed worldwide. The autonomous weapons race had accelerated, just as Dutch had predicted. But humanity had adapted, had found ways to counter the technology, had proven that human soldiers still had a place in modern warfare. Claire knocked on her door. Dutch's daughter was 35 now, working as a military historian. She'd made it her mission to document her father's legacy, to ensure future generations understood what he'd fought for. "Come in," Ava said. Claire entered, carrying a manuscript. "I finished it. The book. The Last Stand of Dutch Mercer, How One Soldier Changed Modern Warfare." Ava took the manuscript, feeling its weight. "He'd hate the attention, you know. He wasn't about glory." "I know, but his story needs to be told, not for glory, but for truth. So soldiers understand what's at stake, what it means to be human in an age of machines." "Can I read it?" "That's why I'm here. I want your input before publication. You were there. You know the truth better than anyone." Ava spent the evening reading. Claire had captured it perfectly. The tension, the fear, the impossible choices. But more than that, she'd captured Dutch's essence, his humor, his wisdom, his unwavering belief in his soldiers. The next morning, Ava called Claire. "It's perfect. Publish it. Let the world know." The book became required reading at every military academy. Ava gave countless interviews, telling Dutch's story again and again, not for fame, but to honor his memory, to ensure his lesson endured. And it did endure. In training facilities around the world, in doctrine and tactics, in the minds of soldiers who learned that being human was an advantage, not a weakness. The battle between human and machine continued, would always continue, but humanity had found its place, had proven that some things couldn't be automated away. Courage, sacrifice, judgment, love. These were the things that made them human, the things that made them warriors, the things that Dutch had embodied and Ava had learned to embrace. Years later, when Ava finally retired, she returned to Arlington, to Dutch's grave, to the place where his story had ended and his legacy had begun. She placed flowers on the stone, white roses like always. "We did it," she said quietly, "built something that lasts, something that honors what you taught me. The program's in good hands now. The next generation is carrying it forward." She saluted one final time. "Thank you, Dutch, for everything, for teaching me, for believing in me, for proving that humans still matter. Rest easy. Your mission is complete." As she walked away, the sun broke through the clouds, casting golden light across the cemetery. Thousands of graves, thousands of stories, thousands of sacrifices. But Dutch's story would live on, not just in stone and metal, but in every soldier who learned his lessons, in every tactical decision that valued humanity over efficiency, in every moment when someone chose courage over calculation. That was his true legacy. Not the Medal of Honor or the books or the programs bearing his name, but the idea, the truth, that being human meant something, that it would always mean something, that no machine could ever replicate the warrior spirit. And as long as soldiers remembered that truth, humanity would never be obsolete. The war between man and machine would continue, but humans would always have a place in it, because some battles could only be won by those who understood what they were fighting for. And that was something no algorithm could ever calculate.